If you're indicted in America, does that mean you're guilty? 67% of Americans think yes, but they're wrong. In 2023, what does indictment mean was the most Googled legal question in the United States. Today, I'm explaining exactly what an indictment is, how it works, and what it means for your constitutional rights. Let's get started. I'm Alex with USA Rights Simplified, where we break down American law in plain English. This video will explain the grand jury process, the difference between indictment and arrest, and your Fifth Amendment rights. Whether you're following high-profile cases in the news or just want to understand how the system works, this is essential knowledge. We'll cover what indictment actually means legally, how grand juries decide to indict, the difference between being indicted and being arrested, what happens after you're indicted, and your constitutional protections throughout the process. Stay with me. Part 1. What is an indictment? Let's start with the basics. What is an indictment? An indictment is a formal written accusation charging someone with a crime. It's issued by a grand jury after they review evidence and decide there's probable cause to believe a crime was committed. The Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution states, "No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentation or indictment of a grand jury." Now, what's an infamous crime? Courts have ruled that any crime that may be punished by more than 1 year imprisonment is an infamous crime. So we're talking about felonies, serious crimes. Historical context. Grand juries are a holdover from early British common law dating back to the 12th century. The grand jury was originally intended to protect the accused from overly zealous prosecutions by the English monarchy. The Founding Fathers kept this system when writing the Constitution because they wanted a check on government power. They didn't want prosecutors to bring charges without citizens first agreeing there was good reason. Federal versus state. Important distinction. The Fifth Amendment applies to federal crimes. States technically don't have to use grand juries, but most do. About half the states require grand jury indictments for serious felonies. Others allow prosecutors to file charges directly through a document called an information. For this video, I'm focusing on the federal grand jury process, which is mandated by the Constitution. Part 2. How does a grand jury work? So, how does a grand jury actually work? For federal grand juries, you can have between 16 and 23 members, and you only need 12 members out of that 23 to vote to indict. That's a simple majority, much easier than a trial jury, which typically needs unanimity. Grand jurors are selected from the pool of prospective jurors, regular citizens, just like you and me. Here's how the process unfolds. Step 1. The prosecutor presents evidence to the grand jury. They can call witnesses, show documents, present physical evidence. Step 2. Witnesses testify before the grand jury, and prosecutors and grand jurors question them. There's no judge there like in a trial, and usually the suspect's lawyer isn't there either. Step 3. The grand jury deliberates in secret. When it comes to grand jury deliberations, it is very secretive and highly protected. The only people allowed in the room are the grand jurors and, if necessary, interpreters. Step 4. The grand jury makes a presentation informing the court of their decision to indict or not indict. If they indict the suspect, it means they have decided that there is probable cause to believe that the charged crime has indeed been committed by the suspect. Now, this is critical. The standard is probable cause, not beyond a reasonable doubt. Probable cause just means there's a reasonable basis to believe a crime occurred, and this person committed it. It's a much lower bar than what's needed for conviction at trial. That's why an indictment does not mean someone is guilty. It just means there's enough evidence to proceed to trial. One-sided process. Here's something most people don't know. Grand juries are accusatory bodies, and prosecutors have no obligation to present exculpatory evidence. That means evidence that might show innocence. Nor do suspects enjoy an absolute right to appear before a grand jury to present their case. It's entirely the prosecutor's show. The defense doesn't get to cross-examine witnesses or present their side. That comes later at trial. It's also much easier to meet the indictment standard. You only need 12 out of 23 jurors to agree. Part 3. Indictment versus arrest. Key differences. People often confuse indictment with arrest. They're not the same thing. Let me explain the difference. Arrest means police take you into custody. They put handcuffs on you, take you to jail. This can happen based on a warrant or, if police witness a crime, on the spot. Indictment is a formal charge issued by a grand jury saying there's probable cause you committed a crime. You can be arrested without being indicted. In fact, that happens all the time. For less serious crimes or state charges, you might be arrested and charged without ever seeing a grand jury. You can also be indicted without being arrested, at least initially. In white-collar crime cases, for example, someone might be indicted by a grand jury and then surrender to authorities rather than being arrested. Timeline. Here's a typical sequence in federal cases. Option 1. Investigation, grand jury, indictment, arrest warrant issued, arrest. Option 2. Arrest, initial appearance, preliminary hearing, grand jury, indictment. Option 3, less common, arrest, prosecutor files information, no grand jury, trial. The route depends on the type of crime, jurisdiction, and how the investigation unfolds. What indictment means legally. When you're indicted, it means a grand jury believes there's probable cause you committed a crime. The government can now proceed with prosecution. You'll be arraigned, that's your first court appearance after indictment. You'll enter a plea, guilty, not guilty, or no contest. The case moves toward trial unless you accept a plea deal. But again, and I cannot stress this enough, indictment is not a finding of guilt. You're still presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. Part 4. After the indictment. Once you're indicted, here's what happens next. Step 1. Arraignment. This is your first court appearance after indictment. The judge reads the charges at you. You enter your plea. The judge sets bail or conditions of release. Step 2. Discovery. Your lawyer gets access to the evidence the prosecution has. This is where you find out exactly what they claim you did and what proof they have. Step 3. Pretrial motions. Your lawyer can file motions to suppress evidence, dismiss charges, or request other rulings from the judge. Step 4. Plea bargaining. In reality, about 90 to 95% of federal criminal cases end in plea deals. The prosecutor might offer a reduced charge or sentence recommendation in exchange for a guilty plea. Step 5. Trial, if no plea deal. If you go to trial, a trial jury, not the grand jury, decides whether you're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. Your rights throughout the process. In criminal cases, the Fifth Amendment guarantees the right to a grand jury, forbids double jeopardy, and protects against self-incrimination. It also requires that due process of law be part of any proceeding that denies a citizen life, liberty, or property. This means right to an attorney, right to remain silent, right to confront witnesses, right to a speedy and public trial, and presumption of innocence until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The indictment starts the process, but it doesn't take away these fundamental rights. Part 5. Common misconceptions. Myth number 1. Indictment means guilt. False. An indictment only means a grand jury found probable cause. Plenty of indicted people are acquitted at trial. The burden of proof at trial, beyond a reasonable doubt, is much higher. Myth number 2. Grand juries are independent of prosecutors. In theory, yes. In practice, grand juries almost always follow the prosecutor's recommendation. There's even a legal saying, a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich if the prosecutor asked. That's because the prosecutor controls what evidence the grand jury sees. Myth number 3. You can present your defense to the grand jury. Usually no. Suspects may appear before a grand jury with permission of the prosecutor or upon order by subpoena, but there's no absolute right. And even if you do appear, you're questioned without your lawyer present. Myth number 4. Grand jury proceedings are public. Everything in a grand jury meeting is kept secret, and the jurors promise not to discuss it. The secrecy protects witnesses, prevents flight from suspects, and preserves the integrity of the investigation. Myth number 5. Indictment applies to all crimes. The Fifth Amendment requires indictment for capital or otherwise infamous crimes, generally crimes punishable by more than 1 year in prison. Misdemeanors usually don't require grand jury indictment. Part 6. Your rights if you're indicted. Immediate steps. If you're ever indicted, here's what you should do. Step 1. Do not talk to anyone without a lawyer. Not police, not prosecutors, not investigators. Invoke your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, immediately. Step 2. Get an attorney immediately. If you can't afford one, a public defender will be appointed. The Fifth Amendment requires that due process of law be part of any proceeding that denies a citizen life, liberty, or property. That includes the right to legal counsel. Step 3. Do not destroy any evidence, even if you think it helps you. Destroying evidence is a separate crime called obstruction of justice. Step 4. Document everything. Write down your timeline, gather any evidence that supports your innocence, identify potential witnesses.
Step 5. Do not post on social media. Anything you say publicly can and will be used against you. Prosecutors check social media. Constitutional protections. Remember your rights. Fifth Amendment, right against self-incrimination. You cannot be forced to testify against yourself. Sixth Amendment, right to attorney, right to speedy trial, right to confront witnesses. Presumption of innocence. The burden is on the government to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, not on you to prove innocence. Let's recap. An indictment is a formal charge issued by a grand jury based on probable cause. It's not a finding of guilt, just a decision that there's enough evidence to proceed to trial. The grand jury typically consists of 16 to 23 citizens, and only 12 need to agree to indict. The process is secret, one-sided, and a lower standard than trial. If indicted, get a lawyer immediately and exercise your Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights. If this video helped you understand the grand jury and indictment process, hit that like button and subscribe to USA Rights Simplified. We break down your constitutional rights every week in plain English. Comment below. Did you learn something new? What legal topic should I cover next? Important disclaimer. This video provides educational information about U.S. federal law as of December 2024. This is not legal advice. If you're facing criminal charges or indictment, immediately consult a licensed criminal defense attorney in your jurisdiction. Every case is different, and this video is general information only.